I know there's tears of joy, but most tears that we experience are not tears of joy. They're tears of heartache and sorrow. This week already I have 3 funerals this week to do. One today, another one Wednesday, another one Friday. All circumstances. The one on Friday, the dear lady has been a friend of mine for years. What a unique lady. Her boy was in a terrible accident 18 or 19 years ago. He was on a ventilator, and they said, just let him go to a facility and he'll never be aware of anything. She was a nurse, and for 18 or 19 years, she worked every day, took care of him and his sister. Right up to the time she died, he's still on a ventilator, still on a respirator. She didn't listen to everyone else. She had a life that was filled with heartache and sorrow. Last week when I went to the little home, her daughter called and they were crying and she was heartbroken. And I said, honey, it's all right to be heartbroken now. But you rest assured of one thing. And I whispered her mama's name. And her eyes opened up and I said, sweetheart, it won't be long till you'll be at a place you're never going to cry again. My mother, after my dad went to be with the Lord, you know the account. My dad was preaching a camp meeting in Tampa, Florida. Preached on the step of death that night, had a heart attack. No one knew he had a heart attack while he preached. When you go back and watch the sermon, it's quite apparent what had happened. He never let on, never said anything about a pain, never said anything. In fact, while he was in the pulpit, I remember vividly what he said. I've looked at it dozens of times on the video. He said, tonight I can see farther than I've ever seen before. Glory to God. He came out of the pulpit and looked at my mother and said, I need help. He collapsed. They took him to the hospital. They called me from the hospital. Dozens and dozens and dozens of people. When I walked through the door, I just got home from preaching a couple hours away from home. And when I walked in the house, they called. I answered. They said, Cal, it's not looking good. He's getting ready to go. A couple hours later, they'd done the heart catheterization. The good Christian doctor was on the other line. And he said, preacher, I don't understand. He said he couldn't have had a tablespoon of blood flowing through his heart. And they told me he finished the sermon. And I thought he had power from blood that you don't fully know about until you need it. But God said until you finish the course, keep running the race. Don't stop. There's nowhere to quit. Shaken the hands many times of the last person that he had the privilege of seeing come to Christ. Through that service that night, the last one that was saved has shaken my hand many times. And every time he does, Larry had tears in his eyes. And he said, I get to thinking, what if he wouldn't have finished that sermon? My mom was absolutely lost. My sisters boarded the first planes they could, took off for Florida. I made arrangements from here. They were there for the next 15 months. Our family did everything we could to try to comfort Mom. It wasn't that she was sorrowful. It wasn't that she doubted where he was at. She got in a little bit of a hurry to go be with him. She was anxious after 50 years of ministry. She was anxious to go and be with him. She'd tell us how much she loved us. She said, but you know, I got such a pull for heaven in the depths of my soul. Mom was on dialysis. She'd had cancer. They couldn't get the cancer. The doctors never did figure out how all that worked because they couldn't find it. They looked everywhere. They knew they didn't get it. And all of the tests said she had it, but they couldn't find it anywhere after they took the one mass out. She was battling all of that and on dialysis. And finally one day they came in and said, we've done all that we can do with dialysis. We can't give any treatments. The doctor said, you need to talk to your mother. And I talked to Mom about it. She said, move me on over to hospice. I won't be there very long. I'm going home anyway. We took her over to hospice. We knew they'd told us that without dialysis, it could be 10 days, 14 days, 17 days. Everybody's different. And the doctor told us all of the things, you know, that she would go through this and go through that. We got her all settled in. The reason she wanted to go there was so all of her kids and her grandkids could be around her. I remember us taking her over to hospice. When all the family gathered in the first evening, she looked at each one of us. She said, I've only got one question for all of you, and I want each one of you to answer me, from the least to the eldest. She said, have I been a good mom? Have I been a good grandma? Well, you know the answer to that. That night, we talked to her for a few moments, and I said, Mom, you can have anything you want to eat. What would you like to eat? And she said, a cream-filled donut sounds good, and a good cup of coffee. Well, they scattered everywhere, and they went and found a donut shop down the street and got some donuts and brought them in. I remember her biting and that cream coming out. She looked at me and she said, that's the best donut I've ever had in my life. She didn't eat 3 bites of it. But just the idea of being able to eat, just the idea of getting what you wanted, not having to watch how much fluid that you took in and all the other things that go with the dialysis. And she just had such peace. We talked it over there and we said, you know, we've got a long shift here in front of us, so let's just rotate. Each one of us will take a turn, and the days will all be in, because we knew Mom, and if we didn't do that, she'd run us all off anyway. So there we were, taking shifts, and she'd just been in a day or two. And my oldest sister said, I'd like to stay with Mom tonight. I said, I think that'd be wonderful. We all kissed her good night. Early hours of the morning, 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, we all headed out. About 2 or 3 o'clock, my sister was sitting by her bedside and looked over. And she said, Mom, are you okay? She said, I'm fine. My sister said, I looked and said she had the biggest tear. She said it looked like almost the size of a dime come out of her eye and started to come down her cheek. And she reached over and got a handkerchief there, tissue. I'm going to dry the tear on Mom's eye. And when she went to dry the tear, she realized Mom was already with the Lord. I've thought about that many times. My sis went to dry the tear of our precious mother here, but there was another hand on the other side saying, that's the last tear you're ever going to shed. Thank God there is a better place to go. I'm glad that this isn't all there is to it. I've loved the trip, and I've loved what God has done and the blessings of the Lord. But I'm going to a place where there is no sorrow. No one ever says anything to hurt anybody else. It is a perfect place, a perfect land. We're going there, and tears cannot come any longer. Then there's the name Milcah. The name Milcah means a queen from a royal race. Every king wants a queen. Not just any queen, a queen from a royal race. May I remind you of something? If you're saved, you are part of the bride of Christ. And if we are part of the bride of Christ, it's because of the